And who's that Redmi?
Repeated பண்றான் திருப்பி unmute பண்ணிடுறேன். Okay, we are live. We can start.
Hi everyone. This is Hariom, and welcome to our Zoom meeting on physiology of pain. Unlike the other meeting today, we will also have some amount of presentation from me and Prakash before taking questions and things like that. And the important thing to remember is for the first half an hour or something like that, you can type in the questions, but I'm not going to take it. I'm going to take that question after I finish the presentation, probably a half an hour or something like that. But keep on typing in your question. Prakash will keep a line on it, and we will look into it in a sort of in a proper manner, if you will, right? The next thing I want to say is I'm not going into detailed physiology. That is not the idea today. I'm going to give a sort of a overall conceptual physiology, if you will. I will go some places. I may go specific. We may go specific, but most of the time we are going to be slightly broader in the sense rather than specific, right? Prakash, do you want to add any more to it before we start?
No.
Okay. So we wanted to give some idea about the nervous system because a lot of people have difficulty with understanding the nervous system. So, can we just throw them out?
Yeah.
So right, thank you. So you want to remember a nervous system has one important property, that is it has to react to whatever information it receives. I'm not talking here about just the stimuli, any information it receives, right? That information can be through any senses it senses, right? It can be through your visual, auditory, touch, and proprioception. Any information it receives, it has to react to it. That is one of the important things of the brain. Because it has to react, it has to understand what is that information. What does it information tell? That it has to understand, then only it can react, right? So the first and foremost thing for us to get into in case of understanding about this information is not like, here it is not telling that this is angle, this is touch. It doesn't go like that. All information in the nervous system are bioelectrical, or biochemical and electrical, right? All information are chemical information. All information are sent in a chemical manner, right? And in an electrical manner. There is no other way a brain can, or a nervous system can send information from one place to another, right? All information are through transportation of ions, transportation of this and that, electric impulse going in and out, permeability of the surface. All these things are happening. There is no other way. So the brain has to understand this chemical information. What does this chemical information mean? That is the crux of the difficulty in understanding brain, as well as the enormity of the way it functions and how beautiful it functions, right? So these things we have to remember before getting into understanding pain. I'm going to have some questions before, so that you can type in, or I think typing is the best way to do it, I think. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So, uh, so the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the function of biological? What is the primary function of a biological system? There can be a lot of function, but what I think is what is the primary function of a biological system? Can you just keep on typing? Okay. Survival, that's a good answer. Protection, okay, protection, right? Any more? Okay. So evolutionary biology says that reproduction and survival are sort of similar. So the first function of our brain or our biological system is to survive. We survive through not dying, as well as by transmitting our DNA or our genome or my gene to my offspring, so that my species lives on, right? So you need to have that understanding that survival is the most important thing, right? So what is the next thing you want to remember is this is what Melzack said: pain is an output and ultimately a conscious decision by the brain, right? Again, I have only put one part of his quotation. So what do you think is the next part? What is missing in this? Because we should be able to answer this, because we have already talked about a lot of these things. So can you tell me what is the uh, next part of the quotation? What should be there? Again, type in, please. Reaction. He has already said that pain is an output, so it's a reaction. So what else is missing in this? Stimuli. Very good. What else? That's a definition of the pain. That is not what we're trying to understand. Any more?
Sir, you might want to minimize the screens that you have. It's blocking it.
Right.
That small windows that you're
I'll
having.
just, this is all right?
No, we still have two windows.
That is not in my control.
Might want to close that window if it's chat window.
No, I have just closed everything. There's
One
nothing in
more
my...
window is there. Okay, anyway, it's fine now.
What is there in that?
No, it blocks some window that you're having. It
No, no, that is the chat I'm seeing.
yeah, that you might want to pull it on some
I
side.
have closed. I have pulled it
Or
in
you,
one direction, right?
yeah,
Okay.
or you minimize it.
Right. I know.
Whenever
I have
you
to see it, right? Okay. So a lot of people have right about input and things like that. So the next part of the quotation is based on the sum of input and past experience. I wanted to remember this word, past experience. Why? Because we have been talking about this in the learning. We learn everything. What does this input mean? What does this stimulus, what does this information mean, is from our past experience from 500 BC to now, as well as your own life, right? So your past experience is also vital. If you touch the fire once, you know that that input is painful, so I need to protect myself from it. So what I will do is I will use that past experience to make this conscious decision of the brain to say that this is pain, don't do that again. All right. So this is a wonderful way of looking at pain from later part of Melzack's writing, not when they were doing gate and pain gate theory. So this is vital for us to understand. This past experience is vital when we are talking about chronic pain, especially when we are talking about chronic pain, right? So I've just used this definition, and you can see three people having the similar experience, right, or a similar stimulus. Everybody is given an injection, so they're all getting the same stimulus, right? So what you can see here is one person is crying, the other person, before it is going to touch, is sort of feeling that pain, and the girl seems to be happy when the needle is inside, right? This is where it is slightly uh, difficult to describe it in sort of an objective way, if you will. Even though I don't like the word, to say it in an objective manner, it's very difficult, right? So there are two or three parts to the definition which I think is vital. The one is the emotional, the sensory and the emotional experience. A lot of people forget this part of it, that is the emotional experience part. If you just look at the sensory part, that is where we have failed for hundreds of years in curing or in managing pain, especially in chronic pain, especially in children who have pain, right? So you need to have this, you need to remember this emotional experience, because I'm going to dwell on that also. And the next thing I want you to dwell on is the other thing which I have blocked, that is your actual or potential tissue damage, right? What I mean by potential is, you can see this boy, that's why I have this picture of, he thinks that there is a potential damage might happen to him, and so he is already in pain, right? So this is also vital, because the system reacts also for a potential tissue damage, because remember what Melzack said, from our past experience, right? From our past experience, we have this uh, idea that this is going to be painful, so we wince at it if you see the stimulus again, right? So we are going to talk about this and this, right? The emotional experience and the actual and tissue damage. So as I told you, we are trying to understand the definition, because if you understand the definition, half of the problem is over. We were talking, I and Prakash were talking, a lot of people are sort of reluctant to understand the definition. They are reluctant to understand that definition encompasses the whole thing we are trying to talk about. If I say pain, it should encompass the whole thing, that is your emotional experience as well as the potential or actual damage it causes, right? So this definition is vital, even though there are a lot of definitions. This is all right for our understanding, right? So I'm going to take two words in this, right? So you see a dog like this, right? You go on the street, you're walking on the street, it is COVID lockdown, nobody is there, and the dogs does this, right? So as I said, the first function of a biology is that it is to survive, right? I want to survive. That is my major thing, right? I have to do that. There is nothing else for me to do. I have to survive, right? So the body has to get this information from the environment, and it has to make up its mind whether that environmental stimuli I'm getting, is it going to make my survival into question or bring my survival into question, right? So what your pain is doing is, it is telling you that this information is danger. It is not telling you what to do. It is just telling you it is danger, right? So again, the next question I'm going to ask you is, if there is a danger, what are the two ways, or probably three, but two ways is better, easier for us to understand. what are the two ways a body reacts to it? If there is, we think that there is a dog like this, right? What are the two ways to react to this? There is a danger signal from the environment. What is the two ways to react by it? I think I'm getting a lot of answers. Fright and flight, adrenaline, that's the physiology. Right. So what the system can do is either fight that danger information, or fright, right? In frighting, if you're afraid of the signal, you do two things, right? You can do two things if you're frightened. One is you can just go like this, right? You can just get stunned and freeze in that place, or you can run fast from the danger, right? You can do two things. That again is vital. So by sending you a pain, the brain is told that there is a danger, and the brain is taking this information as danger, and it can react in two ways. One is it can either fight that information, or it can get frightened by that information. So that is the first part of this we want to understand. That's why I asked you the question, what is the value of, or what is the primary function of a biological system, right? So if I have to survive, I need to know what is danger, what is going to kill me, right? All these things I need to know. What is also not going to kill me also I need to know. Right. So the next part of it is the experience part of the definition, right? Remember this part, the emotional experience of it, right? So if I am having a pain, what are the things I need to know, right? Again, this is an answer you can all answer it. So there is an information from the environment, and it is going inside. I am taking in that information using all my stimulus, right? And I have said that, okay, this is danger, and what are the things I need to know about this danger? You can, as I told you, you can answer in your with your chat. Am I understood? Or you will assume like this: if I have a pain, right? That's what I mean by danger. What are the things I need to know? Discrimination. What do you mean by discrimination? If you have more words to it, it will be far more easy for me to understand. What else? Perception. Perceive what? That's what I'm asking. What are the things you want to perceive? Location of the pain. Oh, wonderful. So you want to know, that's what discrimination means. Where is this pain coming from? So I need to have a sensory experience. That is the sensory part of this experience. My experience has a sensory equivalent, right? So I need to know, where is this coming from? Type and strength. Okay, what else? How much damage it has caused before, right? Very good. What else? Okay, location. Somebody else has already said that. All right. So these are the experience I get when I have a pain, right? So that's what a lot of people have written about the past experience and things like that, memory. So that is your cognitive dimension of that, right? The sensory discrimination is, where is my pain? Is it here on my palm or on my the toe of my right leg? So I need to know that. That's sensory discrimination. The cognitive dimension is what you're all telling me about, the memory of the pain and the past experience, all sorts of things. And affective means emotional part of it. What emotion does it bring you, right? The common example you see in affective pain is that, okay, you have broken up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and you see the photograph. What do you feel, right? You feel pain, you feel hurt, right? That is your affective part of your emotion. That affective function also sort of makes your motivational level go haywire. That is where we think is your physical activity levels also goes very poorly down also along with that. So as I told you, what does it sensory? Um, so in a sensory discrimination, what I mean by that is you need to understand where is the location, intensity, modality of the pain, right? Somebody has written it properly. They have given this answer properly. So we know which part of the brain this has to go to have this discrimination, right? So what part of the brain probably it has to go, or the most important part it has to go? Again, that's a question. If somebody can send it on the chat or open your mic and say it. Very good. So the somatosensory cortex is the right answer, right? So Vignesh says somatosensory cortex, right? So the information has to go to the somatosensory cortex. This is the fundamental thing we need to have an understanding. Where this pain is coming from, where this danger signal is coming from, we have to know. But this is the problem. We don't talk about the next part of this, right? We are always not looking into the cognitive and the motivational part of it, all the emotion aspects of it, right? For that, there are lots of parts are important. I have just given two parts of it. One is your prefrontal cortex, and along with that, your cingulate cortex. All these things are below. Uh, I'm assuming we should also add a lot of other parts to the brain, also hypothalamus, thalamus, the limbic system, not the thalamus, limbic system. Thalamus is also important, but the limbic system, the amygdala of the limbic system, hypothalamus. Remember, we were talking about in learning that the hippocampal region is vital for neurogenesis and learning and things like that. So this is the first lesson we need to have when we are talking about pain. A lot of people keep on saying that this is sensitization, sensitization. I am okay with that, but that is mostly vital for people who are talking about drugs, not for necessarily therapists, right? So we want to think of it as I told you, the previous experiences are all learning. These are all learned something like conditioned reflex and unconditional reflex, right? I will come to that also if we have when we are discussing about things. So when we are talking about pain, we also want to think of it like learned experience. What are the things which you are learning? What are the areas which are vital for our learning and the conscious of the understanding of that stimuli, right? So that's where your prefrontal cortex is far more important, right? And just an example of what are the areas which will light up if you have pain. And again, you can see that, remember, this is your prefrontal cortex that is in the front of your head. You can see that as we take a layer of your brain, whether it is a cross-sectional or longitudinal section, you can see there are a lot of basal region, your hippocampal region, your amygdala. This is your insular cortex that is just underneath your prefrontal cortex. You'll have those things. All these regions light up when you have pain, right? So what is the value of understanding is that is you are trying to, all these things can get changed because remember, brain is a plastic structure, right? Oh, everything can change. So you want to remember there is a diffuse change in your brain when you have pain, right? So the when I'm talking about pain, I'm going to sort of talk into three or four parts. I think the first part is called as transduction. What I mean by that is, okay, I have an injury, right? I have an injury in this region. So what happens if I have an injury? As I told you, the environment and you interacted and you got an injury. Remember, we were talking about in the early classes or early discussions, we were saying that movement is a product of the biology interacting with an environment, right? So you interact with the environment and you get an injury, right? And we have to sense that this is an injury. For that, you have a lot of receptors. Uh, so HT means high threshold, right? Not for all threshold it will be activated. Why? Because pain has to be, you can't activate all your nociceptors every time you touch something. So they have to be of a higher threshold, right? And they should also have uh, what we call as a polynodal. Okay, Prakash. So we also need to look into um, polynodal receptors. What do we mean by polynodal? Is these receptors can be activated by anything, right? Why do we need something like this? Because the environment can throw whatever it needs at you. It can be heat, right? Thermal receptors. It can be mechanical. Somebody can hit you with a stick, or you can fall down from a bike, or it can be chemical, right? You're touched by some chemical, you drank something, so there is pain in your stomach. Remember, pain is also from your visceral regions. So all these receptors has to be active. How do they activate? Because we know that from the first class we learned in physiology, or in case of pathology, we learned that the first thing we have when we have a tissue damage is there is a soup of things which are produced there, right? It can be your things which are coming there to heal you, right? These are not actually bad, right? You need your prostaglandins, you need your cytokinins. All these things are swimming and they are coming there to heal and things like that. When they start coming there, what it does is, this is your receptor. We'll assume that this is your postsynaptic membrane, right? So this receptors, remember, they all have a threshold. You know what's a threshold, right? It's like a door. Not everything can go through that door, right? After a particular amount of these the prostaglandins and bradykinins are there, they produce a sort of open up all the receptors, and they form what we call as a postsynaptic potential, and they activate your receptors, right? So that is why um, I think you also have to study skin like that. Remember, this environment is going to be sensed very easily by all over the body. That's why we all have skin throughout our body. And remember our first physiology class, we will always be taught that skin is a protective organ. If it is a protective organ, what should it have in abundance? Again, that's a question I'm asking. If you want to give an answer, you can chat, put it in the chat. What is the abundant amount of things it should have for a skin to be a protective organ? Wonderful, 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 wonderful. It cannot perceive, it has to have sensors or receptors. That's why you have so much of receptors in your skin, because it has to sense those things. That doesn't mean it is a brain. That's why a lot of people who open the skin and then they find another layer called as fascia, and they're astonished by seeing receptors there. What is wrong with anybody if they think that if you have a receptor, it doesn't mean that it means that it has some connection to the brain? It is not just like that, right? These are all protective layers. They have to have all these things. Then only they can understand the danger which is coming to them or to us, right? So that's the first part of the pain you want to understand. Now, why we need to understand these cytokines and prostaglandins? Because prostaglandins is the most important thing which goes and activates your neurons, and they go and stimulate your first order neurons and second order neurons, all these things are happening because of these things. Why this is important? Because again, in pharmacological interventions, a lot of time this is what is been stopped from producing, right? Say, for example, an NSAID will stop not prostaglandin, but precursor to that will be stopped from producing. It also has some analgesic effect at the first or second order neuron also, right? But most of it is this is in the periphery. So whenever you are trying to rub a skin, right, or try to give massage or something like that, most of the time, probably this can be flushed away to a certain extent. Why I am saying certain extent? Because these things are vital for healing. They cannot go away all the time. They have to come back. They have to come back to heal that region, right? So if you are thinking that this will go away without any sort of uh, half-life period, then you are sadly mistaken in terms of basic physiology. Right. So this information which we have collected, right, it says that, okay, this is injured. So what it has to go? It has to go from the peripheral region to your brain, right? Whether from your stomach to the brain if you have stomach pain, right? So we have to have this information it goes through from our peripheral to the central in two speeds. We should have learned this also. One is sent very fast, one is slow fibers, right? We have talked about A delta and C fibers, right? So the next question I'm asking you is, why do we need two types of this fibers, and one has to be fast and one has to be slow? Why it has to be there? Why it has to be like that? What's the value of it, if you will? Prakash, can you also type in or tell me what's happening in the YouTube, because I can't see. I have another system, but I have not opened it.
Well, no, they are answering questions as you are asking, but it is fine.
Right.
When thing comes up later, we can take.
Sure. Okay. So have we got any results? No. It's a simple question. Don't go like that. It's not about. I understand it's dependent upon severity. I'm asking what is the value of it? Why it has to go? One has to go very fast. Another one has to go very, very slow. I understand it's dependent upon severity. I'm asking what is the value of it? Why it has to go? One has to go very fast. Another one has to go very, very slow.
You might want to.
Yeah, I'll remove. It's confusing. Right, to get a quick reaction, that's the best answer, I think. Immediate threat, okay, that's the point, right? As I told you, always see that from the threat point of view, right? Don't go into pain theory or something like that. That's why we are trying to make you understand that pain is a threat, right? So some threats have to have an immediate response. Some threats can have a slow response. So what threat has to be immediate is what we call as an acute pain. Right, that's where we learn it as the A delta response, right? They are thin, they are myelinated, that is, they are sort of copper wire with good insulation, so they go super fast from your peripheral to your thalamus to your cortex, saying that, look, this place is injured, do something. So you'll have either a withdrawal reflex or some sort of reflex, right? So if you have information which keeps on going, then you need a different kind of wires for that. That is basically your C fibers. So if you are a student or something like that, try to understand why there are two types of fibers, what's the value of those fibers, rather than just mugging up those things. Then it is difficult for us to understand, right? What? Right. So the next thing we can see is that, okay, they are all this information has gone to the first order neuron. The first order neuron is your neuron cells. From there, it goes to your second order neuron, probably your substantia gelatinosa. And why this is valuable is the first order neuron does have the modulation mostly happens in the second order neuron. That's their original research from Wall and Melzerk also. They have a lot of, they go to the lamina 4, 5, all those things, but we will talk only about second order neurons today. That is your second lamina. They have what we call as a wide dynamic neurons, right? What we mean by dynamic and wide is that whatever stimulus you get, they respond. Why? Because as I told you, pain is a danger signal, which can be chemical, which can be thermal, which can be mechanical, right? So any information, these wide dynamic neurons, they just respond. They are also very pliable or plastic. You know what's a plastic, right? They deform, they change. Remember what Melzak said, past experience. Past experience changes the first order neuron, second order neurons itself. So the neurons changes happens from your spinal cord to your brain. Your second order neuron to your last order neuron, the changes happens. And one of the changes happens is in your wide dynamic neurons, right? So this information goes there. From there, they desiccate. They go to your lateral spinothalamic tract, your spino-reticular tract. There are three types of spinothalamic tract: your paleo, the arachnoid, and the neo. If you are a zoology student, that is the older part of the spinothalamic tract. The most newer part of the spinothalamic tract, and then you'll have the sort of which happened in the middle period, right? Why this is important also is already been answered. Remember, there are three things it has to do. One is it has to find out where you have to have pain. That is sensory discrimination. Then there is an emotional the context to it, as well as a cognitive consequence to it. So all three things are going up. So the spinal thalamic tracts also send all these information. Probably we can have them in three parts also. This is basically a picture of your the second order neuron. So your the A delta fibers and C fibers, they come and open up these receptors. Then all your, I was telling you, all these things are chemical and biochemical and bioelectrical things. So these information are going like this. It is not going saying that this is a mechanical pain, this is a chemical pain. The information is not going like that. It is just going as potassium, and the AMPA receptors are open, NDA, NMDA are open. All these things are happening, and then they go from that to your spinothalamic tract, and it goes upwards, right? And also remember, if these things are sensitized, right? Remember we were talking about sensitization earlier also. If these things are sensitized, right? This part of it, can you on it? Right. So these receptors will get more receptors will be formed. More glutamate will be opened, and they will be just going into that. So all sorts of things will happen here itself, right? That's what I mean by plastic change in this wide dynamic neurons itself, right? Here itself, you will have changes, especially in chronic pain or allodynia and that kind of diseases. Right. So, and this information goes from here and it goes upwards, right? It goes to your brain. There is no question about it. But before going to the brain, you can see that it decussates. That is, it goes to the opposite side, and you can see that I'm not sure whether you can read it. It's called as the neospinothalamic, the paleo spinothalamic. The neospinothalamic is the fastest. It's marked in red. You can see in the red. And as you can see, it goes straight away to your cerebral cortex to say where you have pain. Probably if you have acute pain, this is what is going to be activated. When they are going to the cortex, they are also going to your, it goes via your thalamus. That's why it's called as the spinothalamic tract. And also it goes to the other places also. We will talk about those things also, right? And you will also have your descending tracts also, right? Now, Remember, all information which is going up, it has to come down also, because as we know that it is a reactive system, right? Now, sorry, I forgot to talk about this. Prakash was telling me I should talk about this also. Remember, the brain can only do two things. One is your inhibition and excitation. Most of your neurotransmitters will do either inhibition or excitation. Your neurons will also do either activation, or that's what I mean by inhibition or excitation, right? So all this information goes to different parts, your spinal thalamic tracts. It goes to your thalamus, right? The base of your brain here. From the thalamus, it goes to different parts of your brain. So what are the things it gives information to? Remember, it has to go to the S1, that is your somatosensory cortex. That is the first place it has to, that is the important place it has to go, because then only we will know where you have pain, right? That kind of information has to go there. It also has to go to your the frontal cortex, the insula, your amygdala, your basal ganglia, all these. It also goes, some information goes to the cerebellum, and also this big place here, that is your limbic system. So all these areas, they are giving connection. And there will also be some amount of tracks called as the spino-reticular tract, where they end up in the the brainstem itself. And in the midbrain and the brainstem, they have two important regions. One is called as the PAG, another one is your reticular activating system. Right? These two things are vital for our these two are vital for our the descending part of your information, right? And remember, just because this information is going everywhere, they are not going to necessarily always excite some places. Sometimes it might inhibit, sometimes it might excite, right? It depends upon how we do a next part of our the pain transmission, that is your perception, right? So just because the information is going up and it is stimulating everything, that doesn't mean the brain will say, oh my God, I am in danger. Oh my God, I have pain. It will not say like that, right? This is where you want to understand what is a reactive brain. So a reactive brain is not necessarily that every stimulus will get a reaction. A reactive brain is. Prakash, can you send them out?
Yeah, I'm looking into
right.
it. I couldn't find it.
இரு அண்ணா பையன் நல்ல பையன் குட் பாய் தானே குடுத்துரு மதியம் குடுத்துரு தக்ஷ் பப்ளு ஜன்னல் சாப்பிடு ஜன்னல் சாப்பிடுமா வாமா தக்ஷ் என்ன ட்ரெஸ் போட்டுக்க போறப்ப எடுத்துக்கோ பொடி 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 ஐஸ் வச்சுக்கோ போய் ஐஸ் எடுத்து வைப்பு
Why? Who is this?
You can unmute and speak now.
Right. So a reactive brain means that it has to understand this information. As I told you, what goes up is an information. This information can be reacted in different ways. Sometimes how it reacts is it will tell the system to calm down, what we call as modulation of pain. That is, it will start giving chemicals which stops your body from saying that this is painful, right? So it has to do this perception, that is, what is this information telling us? So it is not going to one part of the brain, it goes to different parts of the brain. And the different parts of the brain, as I've already shown, can be anywhere from your hippocampus, the insular cortex, the prefrontal cortex. This is the most important part because this is where our cognition is, how we plan, execute, all these things are in your prefrontal cortex. So this part is very, very important. Your amygdala and the limbic system is part of your what we call as the paleo spinal thalamic trend. That is the lizard brain, if you will. That give you very, very vital information, especially about fright and fight. Those are all vital for that. So many systems or so many parts of the brain is telling you that this information is, this stimulus which is coming in is pain, or even if it understands it as pain, it can modulate in such a way that we don't feel pain. That's what a picture explains. This is what we see in after an injury, after an accident. We don't know our femur is broken into two. After they go take you to the hospital and it's your leg, then only you start screaming at it. So there are many things happening in your brain. For that, as I told you, we can't just look at it from purely a sensory part of sensory experience. It has to be thought of it as an emotional experience also. Uh, so there are two systems which I want to talk about before getting into it. One is your limbic system. Another one is probably your connections between your prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. Remember, the limbic system has the amygdala, the hippocampus. Probably you can also have your the hypothalamus also inside. These are the paleo part of your brain, that is your older part of your brain. They control your basic emotions like sex, hunger, temperature, that kind of thing. So they are vital for your living. And also, we already have talked about this. The hippocampus is also part and parcel of our memory formation. Remember, every pain has to have a memory. Then only you will understand that this is a pain. So I should not touch this, or I should not do this if I will get pain. Right? Say, for example, you jump from 6 feet and you jump down, and if you feel pain, that has to be registered in your brain so that you don't jump from 6 feet next time also, right? So your hippocampus region is vital in that. And these region also have connection to uh, your hypothalamus. Via that, it will have connection to your pituitary gland and your adrenaline gland, what we call as the pituitary hypothalamus adrenaline axis also. So this limbic system controls a lot of things: your autonomic, endocrine, immune, and your musculoskeletal system. Again, why do we want to know this? Because if you have pain, you have connections to your limbic system. The limbic system are activated. That means all these things will change. Your autonomic systems will change. If you have a injury, your heart rate has to change, your blood circulation has to change. You will start sweating. All sorts of things are happening. Your endocrine system is also activated. That is where your cortisols are secreted via your pituitary adrenaline axis, right? Your immune system is also, all systems are sort of activated. That is why you need to understand that pain has such a complex reaction when you have especially chronic pain, not necessarily always in acute pain, right? And the next thing you want to understand is about this part of your brain, that is your frontal cortex and your insular cortex and things like that. These are the areas. The S1 and S2 are your the primary and your secondary sensory motor cortex, right? They have some different functions. We don't have to worry about that. What they tell you is that where your pain is coming from, that information is set from that region. Now, one of the important things about the prefrontal cortex is, because it is a neo brain. What I mean by neo brain is a newer part of the brain. If you see a rat or smaller mammals, right, they don't have this prefrontal cortex. What they will have enlarged is your limbic system. This place will be what they will be large, especially the olfactory region if you are a rat. right? Because they use their senses for your smell senses for a lot of things. So they will have a large olfactory gland part of your brain also. Now, this prefrontal cortex is where you make decisions, right? You can be so much of pain. Then also, if your girlfriend is standing near you, you can behave as though there is nothing is happening to you, right? You will. So there are a lot of things you can control. The cognitive and the executive function is from this part of your brain. That is your prefrontal cortex. Now. The other thing which it has is there is a lot of connection. You can see there are a lot of lines they have drawn to your insular cortex, from there to your amygdala and your hypothalamus. That is your limbic system also. What it does is your limbic system crudely activates, right? If you are in hunger, you are like wanting to do certain things, and if you are angry, you are behaving in such a way. So all these things can be neutralized or sort of inhibited by your prefrontal cortex, right? They can inhibit your limbic system also. So what does it all mean, right? So there is a information coming from the below, right? That is, there is a from the your from your spinal cord, there is an information coming upwards, right? It goes to your PAG. These are all midbrain region, and it goes to the thalamus, from thalamus to different parts of the brain. So what is happening here? Now, what is happening is the sensory cortex is telling you, okay, this is where I have pain, or this is where the danger is coming from. And your limbic system is screaming and saying that this is pain, either fight or fright. Am I understood? They can either say that, okay, we can overcome this, or you can freeze at that position, or you can also run away also, right? But in case of pain, mostly we freeze, right? We just don't know what to do. We just freeze or froze in that region. Now, that is not how our brain works. That is, the limbic system cannot just decide whether you have to see it as fright or fright, because there is a neo part of your cortex, that is your prefrontal cortex. This determines whether I have to fight for this or get frightened for this. If it is saying any of these things has happened, they all start to activating what we call as the descending system. That is, the descending system, whatever is coming up, right? So you think of it as positives, they can give you a lot of negatives, right? They start to either reduce it or they start to increase it also. That's why it's called as modulation, right? If somebody is coming with a knife and they have already struck you, the pain will get exaggerated by your modulatory systems. That is, your prefrontal cortex will say that this is too much of pain, run, right? So this modulation system makes the pain go away or increase it or try to decrease it. All these things are happening via what we call as your prefrontal, amygdala, and PAG system. There is a sort of connection you can see from this to here. The PAG is considered one of the most important part of your midbrain. It's called as the periaqueductal gray matter. It is surrounding your the aqueducts, right? So these gray matter, they can give you information of all these information. The PAG either starts to give what we call as endorphins, right? We should have heard of this word and we should have studied about this also. A lot of endorphins are given, and they go and start to suppress the pain in different areas. But as you already know, one of the areas which Wall and Melzack in the earlier works have said that this modulation happens mostly in substantia gelatinosa, that is your second order neurons. It can also happen in other places also, right? So this is sort of a simple way of saying that this gets modulation. But unlike because there is the frontal brain is involved here, the frontal brain has a lot of other things like attention, cognition. All these things are perceived by your, or these are functions of your frontal cortex. And we know that the brain cannot do two or three things at the same time. It cannot do that easily, right? A lot of people think that they can, mm, uh, they are dual task masters and things like that. And it has been proven again and again. It is nearly impossible for 98% of people to do two things, right? Say, for example, you cannot make a phone call and keep on driving, right? Either you don't concentrate on your phone or you cannot concentrate on your driving, except for 2% nobody can do. So what happens is, if there is attention somewhere else, right? And what it does is, when there is the attention is somewhere else, it seems to be that this can actually reduce your activation of other things, thereby you can down modulate your peak. Or if you are doing something else like meditation or dancing, that's what part and parcel of mindfulness and things like that come into play. You can sort of modulate your pain also, right? There are a lot of fMRI and other studies also. For neuroendocrinology, you need to have pharmacological studies. For attention studies and things like that, they have a lot of fMRI studies to show that if you already tell these people that this is not hard, right? If you tell them that and give it to them, a lot of people think that it is not hard. That is part and parcel of what we call as the nocebo effect also, the placebo and the nocebo effect also. If you say that this is good, they tend to think that this is not painful, right? That kind of thing is all part and parcel of your function of your what we call as the ACC frontal PAG pathway, right? Basically, it starts from uh, your prefrontal cortex and goes to the insular cortex, then via your limbic system and hypothalamus, all these things to your PAG. So the PAG has a lot of the endorphins which can modulate your pain, right? So that is, I think that's what I wanted to say about pain physiology. I have not covered the whole thing. Deliberately, I have left out lots of parts so that you can go and read for more information, as well as I thought there will be a lot of scope for discussion, so that we have not looked into the whole thing. Right? Prakash, do you want to add more to it before?
Nothing.
இல்ல போயிட்டு இருக்குது. டைம் ஆயிடுச்சுல உங்களுக்கு?
Soundar.
Right. You need to unmute.
Sorry. Do you want to add more to it before we get into Q&A?
No.
Okay. So do you have any questions? I will be we will be happy to discuss about those things. Prakash, do you want to take any questions?
Just a second. I'm trying. Somebody is keeping it on. Just 1 second. I'll do that. Okay.
Okay, I'll take the first question. Are all acute pain a real threat? That's what your brain has to decide. That's why you have a frontal cortex, which decides that some can be a real threat and some can be, it can just afterwards, it can say that, okay, it's not a real threat, right? So for example, if somebody bumps into you when it is dark, probably we are thinking it is a real threat. But after sometimes you may think that, okay, that's all right. So The systems works like that, but as you pursue more, it will be all right for you. Anything else I want to take?
Uh,
I'm looking into the YouTube. That's
yeah,
yeah, okay.
one question that's not how it was put, but there is this conventional
Hmm.
understanding that there is a pain center is there in the brain.
Right.
You want to respond to
Right.
that?
That's why I wanted to show that fMRI study of there is no one pain center, because pain is an experience, right? That's why the definition is vital. Pain is not a sensory experience. Pain is a sensory and an emotional experience. Because it's an emotional experience, the emotion is distributed in large parts of your brain. So there is no one pain system or brain region or pain track, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's another new question in, I think in Zoom has come. Uh,
We'll take this. There are many theories of pain. I don't think so. There is only one physiology of pain. Uh, Probably there are pain theory. Wall and Milzak, they themselves said that it was an incomplete theory because they left out the emotional part of it and the cognitive part of it. So they wrote a newer theory called as the matrix theory, but the physiology will be similar, except for some small variations.
about this
Hmm.
theories of pain, there's a lot of people think that there are different theories of pain, so I'm working based upon this theory and
Yeah,
so on. The thing is, there are theories that are outdated. There are
right,
theories which we can call competing theories, where we still jury is still not out, that we don't know which theory is more applicable, right? So we need to be able to distinguish. Some theories are outdated theories. Say for example, if you take specificity theory, it's an outdated theory. Or some theory may have explained only a part of it, now you have more updated version of the theory. Say for example, matrix theory is an updated version of gate control theory.
right.
So we have to learn to look at theories this way. Theories on its own, it is not of much value. So we need to see if uh, a theory's findings have updated. New information comes, then theories become outdated also. So we need to learn to look at things that way, rather than saying so many theories or the which theory to use. We have to see which theory is findings are currently validated. So in that case, gate control theory, we need to move on. This is what I think.
The mature organism theory is what we are talking about, Murugavel. I don't think it's a separate theory, but when Clifford was saying that uh, there was no proper studies to validate what he has said. So he proposed the theoretical idea, but the whole idea is should be all similar. The physiology should be all nearly the same, except for certain areas which we may not be able to explain at this point of time. So I'm not sure why we have a lot of theoretical ideas.
Mature organism, it's a model. It's not a theory per se. Based upon evolution concepts and functioning of nervous system, Gifford proposed a model. It's not a theory per se.
Uh, okay, what else do I want to take? Hmm, uh, I think we can start with this. We are unable to perform two tasks, so that is mean that engage in some task, you'll have less pain. I think this is easy for you to. Mm, uh, you should have seen this. You would have had some injury when you are playing cricket. Not injury, but you would have scratched your skin and things like that. You would have bumped into somebody, and when you come home, it will be painful until you are playing cricket. You will not feel the pain, especially if you are a child, right? So it is possible, but the only problem is what is the half-life period of it, how long it lasts. These things we are unable to have a clear answer, right?
Hi, home sir. One more question, sir.
Sure, go ahead.
Sir, actually, I had one small doubt. Generally, people have pain. The threshold of the pain intensity is same during daytime as well as nighttime. But when the people during daytime will forget about the pain, the intensity and threshold of the pain. But the same pain when it goes to nighttime, why people feel the same pain much?
Now only I just finished the answer, so you should be able to say that. Now only I just finished the answer, right? So you should know what's the answer for that.
Okay.
Because we are doing something throughout the day, right?
Hmm.
So your attention is somewhere else, and you go to the night, you come to your bed, and you are thinking about yourself, right? That is one of the reasons why pain is high. If you are having a lot of work and if you are distracted more, then your perception of pain is slightly lesser. It doesn't go away, but it will be lesser so that you can push it to your back of your mind, right?
Okay, one more question, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
there are many pain theories. What is the pain theory that you will follow?
As I told you, now only we just answered that.
Many more theories are there, but
There
what
is
is
no, there is only one theory. There is no theory I can see of. I don't see any other theory. What theory is there?
what you follow?
No, there is only one theory. There's only one physiology for pain. What else is there? I don't know.
Because matrix theory is there, Melzack and gate theory is there. There are
What,
many more theories.
there
Now,
are only, you just said only one, right?
Mhm.
Matrix theory was expansion of pain gate theory. They themselves said that they have missed out a lot of parts of it, and they have put a theory called as
you have mentioned it previously. Melzack will consider it's only sensory, but it's sensory, emotional, and all the things you have
that
told
is
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That is where they Milzak developed now into what we call as a matrix theory, with
Yeah.
the emotional and other parts added to it.
Okay, advanced version.
Correct. They wrote it in the 90s. It's not an advanced version of it. It's an updated
Yeah,
version.
and it
Right?
has been changed to an advanced one. So emotional, all the bits came
And
into it.
also, it's not just you cannot think theory of advance. Theory is an updation because you understand more physiology, more experiments are done. So you start of updating what you know, those things. That is all. Only therapists are sort of, we are all stuck up with the idea of theory and things like that. But the physiology gets updated every time because there are a lot of newer things are coming. So what you need is a physiology of pain, not a theoretical idea of pain is not needed.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay. Sunlight and pain, I don't know. Mm, as we have already said, so the question is, do you support mindfulness strategy? As I told you, it is not my support. We keep on saying this again and again. Science is not a democracy for everybody to vote on it. If everybody uses it, probably it is rubbish. That is one of the hallmarks of science. Uh, so, but there are, if you ask whether there is a lot of evidence for mindful strategy, there is. But there are different other ways of problems in that. There is also a problem in that. But you can't ask us whether I support or don't support. That doesn't make, that's all right. We don't want to have that kind of things. Does neuroplasty apply to pain? That's what I was talking about all the time. That's what I told you about what Melzack said. Melzack said pain is an experience. You have an experience. You already have that. So that means that the whole brain has to change. And one of the ways you change is the classical conditioning, right? Say, for example, if you are sitting for a long time and you got pain, if you do it 10 days, then your brain has made a connection between sitting for a long time and pain, right? It has made a connection. Even if you don't sit for next 10 days, after that you go and sit, the brain will think that, oh my god, this guy is doing already what made it painful, right? That means that the brain has changed. There's a huge plastic change has happened in your brain. You have learned those things, so you need to be wary of those things. Prakash, you're awfully quiet today.
Uh, it's not
Uh,
my
uh,
area of expertise. That's how I have not read much on it. So
Okay, pathomechanical causing of pain or pathomechanical, yeah. The other thing you want to answer, that's what I'm, that's why I think this physiology is what is missing from it. Just think about like this. If you are standing in a crooked fashion, right? When will the system think that this is danger? Am I understood?
You can say poor posture, sir. It will be more
No, no, I'm just
understandable.
saying crooked manner you are sitting, right? You are sitting like this, or some of you are doing this and looking at the phone, right? So it will take some time. Afterwards, what do? You change your posture because your system will not allow you to be there for a longer time like that, right? So whenever somebody tells me that this causes pain, I want you to ask this question: will the system think that this is danger? When will the system think that this is danger? If it thinks like that, what will it do? As I told you, it can only do two things: either it can fight or fight, right? The fighting is change your posture. Am I understood? Right? So it's sort of easier way of understanding how to look into pain. So the next question we will look into is why do people with pain get habituated with medication or electrical modalities but yet show low threshold to pain? I am not very sure what this means. Can you uh, uh, Davanshi, can you?
So,
Yeah.
so basically, just taking a simple case of low back pain, suppose a chronic low back pain. So what I have observed till now is people get habituated with the medication doses, like a particular amount of medication which they used to take. Now it is not effective to stop their pain, so they require higher doses. Similarly, if electrical modality like a therapist provides them either TENS or something, the intensity with which they used to take, now that is not helpful for them to stop the pain, so they require the higher intensity, but yet any provoking stimuli they show a very low threshold to it. So like why such discrimination exists, I'm not able to understand.
Low threshold, I don't understand what you mean by low threshold. That's what I want to.
Like suppose if the patient has told I'm not assuming like it will be the cause, but suppose if they say like prolonged sitting, like sitting for just 2 hours provokes the pain, now sitting even for 1 hour provokes the pain, so then how to understand this concept? Like in some part it gets the stimulus gets habituated and stimulus also gets sensitized, like how to discriminate or understand that concept.
Right. That's what I'm saying. If you want to get habituated, then you are probably thinking that this is not a danger signal, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, say for example, your coffee mug, right? Uh, when you were small, when you touched the coffee mug, it was very hot, right? Uh, with your hand as well as with your tongue when you're putting coffee into the mouth. But as time goes by, you get habituated for that and you get adapted to that stimulus, right? Why? Because slowly you are learning that this is not going to hurt my hand or my tongue. So you get habituated. But at the same time, if there is if you are cooking and there is oil spilled on you, it is difficult to get accommodated. A lot of people run away from that situation, right? That if it again and again happens, you get sensitized more, right? Because it's a fright response you get. You are fighting for that, so sometimes you get sensitized to it. Also, you are learning. What are you learning? If I sit, I'm getting pain. So every time the system is keeping on getting this information again and again and again and again. So it tries to avoid it. When it avoids it, it becomes more and more sensitive. So you need to look everything in the context, not as this is the same and this is the same.
There is a real life example for what you are referring to. There are some parts, some states in North India where they uh, uh, they take this jalebi out of the boiling oil. They
Yeah,
just put
yeah,
their hand
yeah.
in and take it.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, there are many videos in Facebook also. People are keeping directly hand in the hot oil, preparing pakodis.
Yeah. So that's why I keep on saying that you need to look into these things from the how the system reacts to your danger signal, rather than thinking of each signal has to be separately looked at, as not as it's the same for everybody. It's not like that, or every signal, right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Uh, there are certain areas of brain are seen in fMRI with respect to pain. So what are the cortical changes occurring and with pain? You don't have to see it as cortical changes or this change or this change. It is the brain changes. You cannot have cortical changes alone. The brain changes or the human system changes. That's the actual word. That's what Prakash also keeps on saying, that there is no brain. Plasticity alone is not just in the brain, it's the system which changes. So you need to study it like that, rather than thinking of it as cortical changes.
and also because we discuss plasticity often when it comes to diseased state, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that plasticity happens only after disease. There is always a change that is taking place in brain. If you are practicing something new, anything, there is always a change. Your brain doesn't remain as it is. It's acting all the time. There will always be adaptation that is taking place. So to think that whether there will be, it has to be.
Right. Uh,
There was one question from Saumi Ravi Kumar. It's
okay.
from YouTube.
Okay.
What is the reason for a delayed pain in the muscles due to any accidents? Especially it increases more from day one. And they're asking like in delayed onset muscle syndrome, why it's delayed.
For DOMS,
Ah, yes.
I don't have a clue. Also, I don't.
No, sir, it says accidents.
Okay, due to
No, they
accidents.
mean the same. That's what I meant. There is a delayed response in the muscle.
Okay, right. Okay, after the accident. Phew, uh, the we know certain to certain extent that in the immediate period after, if you have an injury, there is a probably so much of adrenaline in your system. It modulates your pain and it looks into your survival, right? Say, for example, keeping your heart rate up and things like that, being awake, and that kind of things are far more important for the system, I suppose. So this adrenaline, uh, so much of changes in the system in the early stages, especially during the shock, has a limited amount of or reduces your perception of pain. But as you are treated for the pain, probably you're getting a suture. That suture is again an injury, right? So that will also increase your pain. That will increase in the first day or second day. And also remember, in the first day and second days, they might pump you with so much of analgesics and probably some very, very good Ketonax. If you're on Ketonax, you will know that those are wonderful painkillers. You will feel like as though you're in a cloud. So after those things wear off, your pain starts to sort of go more and more. So these are the simpler things why your pain is getting more and more as time goes by, right? So the next pain habituation can be explained naturally. Any habituation is the same physiology, so there is no separate physiology for pain. It's for habituation or accommodation is the same thing. That is how your system learns. So accommodation happens. That is, you grow new neurons and you grow new pathways which stops that, or you grow new neurons which activates other systems. That is how you habituate. That's how you learn in any situation, not just in pain. So that's how you have to explain everything. Placebo effect on modulating pain. Again, as we know that because there is an emotional aspect to it, as well as there is frontal plane, the frontal brain is also involved in all these things. We know that uh, lot of other cognitive factors influence our pain and makes it feel better, right? If you have an AC room and you're sitting with a clean shirt, probably wearing a tie or a coat or something like that, and if you're saying all sorts of buzzwords which your patient can't understand, probably they may get better than if you are just in a GH with a uh, wooden table and a trolley which is as old as India itself, right? If you have something like that, then it may not get the same frontal region response to it. So placebos are vital, and we know that it is one of part and parcel of a good treatment, especially in pain. I'm hoping that that is all right, Hina. Then what is CAPA? What is that? I don't know what is CAPA. Krishna, do you know what's a CAPA? Saravanan?
Congenital insensitivity pain. It's a very, very, very rare condition, sir.
I don't have a clue, so I'm not
People
talking about
die
that.
of it, sir. At a very early age, they die.
Right, right. That's an outlier to outlier, so we are not talking about that.
Hardly very few cases have been reported. So.
Yes, yes. I also don't have a clue, so we are not getting into it. What else have we missed out? When you put stress or load on the same point of the system for a certain period of time, then we will feel pain. Yes, that is the point of it. It's not that you're feeling pain. The system is telling you that you're putting pressure on the same point again and again. That might tear the skin or tear something, or you may get an ulcer, pressure sore, right? That's why you keep on turning when you're lying down. So all these things are sort of danger signals. So that danger signal is the body telling you that this is painful, so change your position, right? There are so sedatives and pain relief for diazepam, muscle relaxants. How does these work? As I told you, these are the parts of the pharmacological aspects of it, which we have not gone into it much, because we know that there are all our information are transmitted. That's why I told you all information are chemically transmitted. So you can mask it, or you can reduce it, increase it via some sort of chemicals. And one of the wonderful chemicals you can think of are the best chemical for painkiller, gold standard is morphine. Right? If you have morphine, that is the best painkiller, especially for patients with cancer pain and things like that, right? So they produce morphine like a substance and they try to give it, but all these things have another problem, that is addictive problems are very common. And also, because pain is complicated, it's not just a sensory information, it is not just an emotional information. You need to go beyond your chemically reducing pain and things like that. And that is very well illustrated by the opioid crisis in US. Here also, a lot of people are thinking that this opioid crisis is huge in India also, especially a drug called as tramadol. It is given out like candy, especially for people with diabetes. Everybody will get a tramadol just right and left. And it is being proven that it's not that effective as we think. So we have to be careful when it is chemically modulated pain, right?
Sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
Krishna here, sir. So we have been seeing that exercise is a best way to address pain as a physio. So how does this come into the picture here? If we can give us an explanation.
Right. So there are, this is the part which I think this is my explanation. This is not anybody's explanation. The first thing is there are what we call as non-specific effects of pain, because as we know that if we keep on moving, the system tries to understand that this is not something to be afraid of, right? This is not a danger signal. So when you keep on moving, the system thinks that, okay, even if I move with this pain, nothing is getting broken. This is not an actual danger signal. It seems I can move up to 10, then 20, then 30, then 100. I can keep on moving up. So it changes your perception of pain so that you're slowly getting modulated with that. For that, that is the one of the reasons why, if you look into evidence about what is the best exercise for low back pain, it keeps on saying any exercise. It is not saying this exercise alone. That is one of the reasons, because you are not increasing the strength of the back, increasing the strength of the multifidus. All these things are small parts of the exercise. The larger part of your exercise is changing your brain perception, right? That is, you're teaching your brain, if you move also, this danger is not going to hurt me that much, right? So you have to think of it like that when you are thinking of an exercise, not as increasing strength, increasing endurance, this and that. That might be there, but that alone should not be there. And also it may increase your threshold for pain, right? As you get fitter and fitter, your threshold for brain can get better and better.
About weakness of muscles. Again, that line of reasoning comes from very poor understanding of joint function of vertebral column. If you look at vertebral column, they are very incongruent joint and they are carrying a huge weight, which means that muscles plays a major role in maintaining the joint stability. All right. What I'm trying to say is, if your muscles are weak, we can't stand still, because the stability of the spine is pretty much dependent upon the strength or force production ability of spinal muscle groups. So to think that multifidus is weak, transverse abdominis is weak, or other muscles are weak, is again, it comes from a very poor understanding of how vertebral joint function is maintained.
One more thing what we can say is, like, weak means how much compared to what, if the person is able to walk or stand or do his daily activities. If you say weak, I am, he's able to achieve his activities. So you can't, a patient comes to us into the clinic walking, you can't assess a muscle saying that it is weak, because it is helping that person for completing the activity. So that's also.
Yeah.
So sir, you yes, sir.
Go on.
So you go on, sir. You proceed.
Yeah, that's the point. If you're saying weakness, we don't have a definition for weakness. We ask the patient to perform abdominal exercise and patient is not performing. So therefore we say weak. But when I'm trying to perform abdominal exercise at home, even I'm finding it so difficult to do it. Right. So this is a common problem we repeatedly come across. Just because we have not evaluated people, the healthy participants, we just think that all healthy participants are apparently having the so-called strength.
I think there was a, sorry, go ahead.
Sir, as you say, exercise in a way changes, addresses the context or gives the human body system a different perspective of how to perceive the threat, handle the threat. It changes the context. That is one way how it works.
No,
so we need not worry
you
about the
relearn,
specifics.
you
But
relearn to accept that this is not necessarily such a big danger signal. You relearn basically, and as I told you, all our learning is based on conditioned learning or unconditioned learning, conditioned stimulus learning, or so you learn to sort of undo those things and do that, right?
okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think there was one question. I think it was breathing exercise and reduction of pain. Again, all these breathing exercise and things like that, it focuses your attention on something else, right? So it does two things very well. if your attention is focused away from your pain, then your cognitive function is working very well. If your cognitive function is working very well, then it has far better idea of making a good decision, right? What I mean by good decision is to clearly understand whether this stimulus or this information which is coming is a danger, whether I have to work more or do more physical activity to overcome these things. So it gives you a sort of a clear mind to make this decision. Also, as I told you, the simple idea why a lot of people ask you to do breathing exercise, especially during pregnancy and things like that, is it focuses your attention somewhere else, not on your internally into your body itself. Uh, I think that's a good question. I think that's from uh, Kiran, right? What makes psychological pain persist, especially in old age patients in absence of physiological pain? I don't think there is anything called as physiological pain or psychological pain. All pain are biopsychosocial. That means that the pain will have a psychological component and a physical component. If they have only psychological pain, that means that they have probably a psychosis or a neurosis that has nothing to do with ours, right? So they will have both. So you need to address both of it when you are talking about it. As we exercise, opiates are also released. So we don't feel pain, rather we feel our body light. That is one of the reasons why you get what we call as an exercise high. After you do an exercise or do 50 kilometers of cycling, you feel an sort of a high because of probably a lot of serotonin and dopamine and other neurotransmitters are produced in your brain, and it feels sort of you feel happy. That is the reason why a lot of people are in a way addicted to doing these kind of things also. Iontophoresis, nothing gets into your skin. That is the function of the skin. The function of your skin is protection, so it cannot allow those things to get in, because if your ions are going inside, the ions might also let in a lot of viruses and things like that. So it may not allow that. It rarely allows things inside your skin. Even the ultrasound does not go that much inside your skin, because um, that is why you have a skin. It will not allow that easily to anything to percolate that easily. That is why a lot of our medicines will have alcohol base, because the alcohol is can percolate inside your skin. Other things cannot. So probably maximum it can penetrate. It will be 3 millimeters, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a long time I've studied about those things. So it rarely gets inside. So nothing to do with anything.
Sir, one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Actually, our clinical ultrasound, which is 1 megahertz, and when it is, I think, does it works or it doesn't works?
It doesn't.
It's just a placebo, I think so. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Because as I told you earlier, I think in the early class also we were talking about this. Prakash was also telling about this. The system will want to be in a state of homeostasis, so you can't produce the bubbles inside or this and that, whatever the ultrasound claims. It cannot be produced that easily. So to send things inside is very, very difficult.
Because the diagnostic ultrasound, they use the probes 12 megahertz, which have that much deeper penetration to see the abdominal organs, whatever the soft tissue. But our ultrasound head is 1 megahertz. How much far will be the depth of penetration? I think
It's not just even if it goes on the depth, as I told you, most of your pain is not on the site of pain. Most of your perception is happening inside your nervous system. So only in the acute conditions you may be treating the peripheral region and getting any result. If it goes into probably 3 months or 6 months, none of this will have any value at all, if at all, if there is any. right?
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sorry,
The
Prakash, go ahead.
depth of penetration is one thing, and ultrasound causing a physiological effect is another thing. We should not confuse this two. Just because, say, for example, 1 megahertz has a lower penetration, 3 megahertz has higher penetration, that doesn't automatically make it having a better physiological effect. Because with the same logic, if you're giving a diagnostic ultrasound, as they were saying, 12
Megahertz.
megahertz, then it still doesn't cause any physiological, you can visualize things better, but it doesn't cause any physiological changes.
Correct.
Right? So that's how you need to look at it helps to visualize with a higher frequency. But if you're talking about does it cause physiological effect on the
Sir,
skin, on the muscle, we have clear evidence that it doesn't. So whether it's 1 megahertz, 3 megahertz, 5 megahertz, it doesn't cause any difference.
sir,
Physiological effects, no.
Sir, I'm not talking about the physiological effects, or does it has that much penetration? Because the depth of penetration of 12 megahertz is that much deeper. Say, cast a small condition, take as a backache or a shoulder pain. So the depth of the penetration of the, I'm talking only depth, not the physiological effects. Say the therapeutic ultrasound, what is the depth of the penetration and what is the depth of the penetration of the diagnostic? Say it has a drastic difference between 12 megahertz and 1 megahertz. Say, does really our ultrasound works or not? Say it works. What you are saying is, you say it works on physiological effects. Say, does that much depth it will go?
No, I'm saying irrespective of depth of penetration, ultrasound do not have physiological effect, whether it is in the skin or the muscle or any other structure.
Say it's just a placebo.
Yeah, you can call it whatever name that we want to give.
What is your pain-induced reflex inhibition of the muscle? As I told you, it is not a take on. It is not my take or anything like that. That's what I was talking about. If you are, if you think about like this, there is a dog which is coming to bite you, right? And what do is most of us do only one thing: we freeze, right? You go tighter like that, right? So that is a response you get from your system trying to do whatever it has to do for your danger signal. So likewise, your muscles get sort of frozen in one posture or in one region, or a group of muscles are frozen. All things are happening so that you're not moving that region. So your brain stops your muscles from moving. So that is why you get this tightness. You can call it as reflex inhibition, but I'm not sure whether that's the right word. But anyway, I think that's also a good word, but that is the point of it. And the problem with that is, again, a lot of people tend to think that there is something in the muscle to be treated. Again and again, they keep on thinking like this. I don't know why. We know that the muscle cannot get tighter or looser by itself. That is the function of your nervous system, right? So if you are rubbing it with your hand, or if you're rubbing it with some instrument you have found out in your kitchen, or if you are doing something else to your muscle, remember that is just another stimulus you are giving to your system to sort of mask the other signals, or move your attention from here to there. So those kind of things are Saravana, no, mic on it. So these kind of things are what you want to look into, rather than thinking what will happen if this, a lot will happen to this. The physiology is this. There is nothing more than this. You have to fix everything into this framework. If you can't fix it, then the physiology should be wrong, or that phenomenon is unexplainable, right? That rarely happens. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Sir,
Okay. So,
when is the next class, sir?
okay. We don't know, because it looks like uh, we are not very sure anyway. Prakash, do you want to say anything before we close?
No.
Okay, thank you everyone for participating in this discussion. If possible, we may do it, or we may not. It depends upon the time of lockdown and things like that. And it seems that we can start our clinic in Chennai. So I'm not sure when we are going to do the next. Bye bye. Thank you.